So when I was growing up, there were some of my friends then that if you asked them what they wanted to be, like when we were like teenagers, if you asked them what they wanted to be, they would tell you, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. Oh, I want to be an engineer. And years down the line, these people went ahead and became those things. No questions asked, no hesitation, no regrets. And then there was me. If you asked me in my teenage years what I wanted to be, I think my answer then was, oh, a lawyer, maybe an engineer. I had just a couple of different ideas of what I wanted to be. Each one of them interesting to me, loved them, couldn't choose, right? But a few years down the line, I went ahead and studied something entirely different from whether I was being an engineer or being a lawyer, right? And then from there, I still went ahead and took on jobs that were totally diverse. And each job I took on, I loved them in some way, shape, or form. I've done, you name it, from customer care to operations to HR to business strategy, continuous improvement. In fact, I have started businesses. Fun fact, my first business was in 2010. I started a brand consulting business. And then a couple years later, I started another business with a friend of mine where we were designing websites for people. I've had different things that I loved in different moments of my life that I have gone ahead to study. And I've also had other businesses in the last few years, which different businesses, different things. I used to think something was wrong with me because I could never stick to one thing. I could never just say, oh, this is what I love, and that's it. And so recently, I came across the word multipotentialite. That simply means anyone who has multiple interests, multiple passions, multiple abilities, which means you can do almost anything. And it struck me and I was like, oh, so this is exactly like who I am. I am somebody who loves a lot of things and who can do almost anything. In fact, fun fact, about 5 years ago, I started telling myself that I'm a jack of all trades and a master of transferable skills. And even by then, I didn't even know that this was a normal thing. I just thought that I was somebody who just could never be one thing, right? In my 15 plus year career, I've been in 3 different situations whereby I was doing a role and along the line, a second role got added to that role. So I was doing 2 roles in one. And then one day, they came up to me and said, hey, now we want to separate these 2 roles that you're doing. We want you to focus on one versus the other. And those times have been the most confusing times of my life because these are 2 things that I love to do, 2 things that I do so well. Now you want me to choose one of them. It was so difficult to choose. In fact, I was thinking about it recently and I said, this kind of reminds me of when you ask a parent, like, who is your favorite child? Which one would you choose over the other? And most parents can never answer that question because it's almost like, but they're my kids. I love them equally, right? So for me, that's the way that I try to make sense of this. Like, these are all like my children and I love them almost equally and I can hardly choose. But one thing I want to caution is that if you're like me and you stay stuck trying to see which one you would love more so you could select, you could be in that situation for a very long time. And the danger of that is that the more time you wait, the more opportunities pass you by. The more you stay confused, the more you stay small, the more you're not growing. And so what I do whenever I'm faced in a situation whereby I have to choose between one of the things that I love, I ask myself, what is it that makes the most sense to me in this moment of my life? Where am I going the next few years and what is going to get me there? Right? What is the decision I can choose today that I can learn something from and be okay with? Now, there is no perfect decision. And I've stopped chasing after perfection when it comes to decision making because the only perfect decision is the one you make. If you don't make that decision, then there's just no need, right? But it's okay for you to say, you know what, in this moment, this one makes the most sense to me. And it's okay for me to come back tomorrow and choose differently. You can choose differently. It's not a closed door. It's not a do or die affair. It's not a life or death situation whereby when you choose one, then you're stuck with it forever. No, that's really not how these things work a lot of times. But we're so afraid of being wrong that we altogether do not want to make a selection. We don't want to make a choice. But that's staying in one spot and not making a choice is hurting us more than making one choice and going ahead to make a different one if that one doesn't work out. The good thing about making a decision is because you learn something. It helps you grow. But if you don't make that decision, you stay small, you stay with the what ifs. What if I tried this? I wish I had tried this. But regret is permanent. The what ifs are permanent. And let me leave you with one thing that someone said recently about why we need to make a decision and not stay stuck. I saw a video where the guy said, for every time you hesitate, someone less talented, someone less qualified is taking your spot. Think about that. If you don't take a step and do one thing today, there's somebody else who has the audacity to do that thing. And you see them do it, and you still be asking yourself, oh, I wish I did that. For how long are you going to ask yourself, oh, I wish I did that?